Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. Where do consultants like to hide?
Where do consultants like to hide? Consultants like to hide in consulting, quite frankly. We've talked about this idea of consultants who come to us and say that they are not a marketer or not good at sales. And, what that tends to lead them to do is to just focus on delivery. It's the safe place. It's the place where they know they can be successful. And so that's where they live.
And I suppose let's validate the sentiment first and foremost. Like, it's understandable why you feel that way, because for most of you listening, you're likely not marketers. Unless you run a marketing agency or a marketing consultancy, that would be the exception. Sure. And even they like to hide in delivery, which is hilarious, right? But certainly if you are not a trained marketer by profession, or you're not trained in business development or sales by profession, you're going to naturally feel more comfortable operating within your sphere of expertise. Whatever that thing is. If you're an operations consultant, it's operations. If you're finance, it's finance, etc. Right? HR, culture, whatever it may be. So, on the one hand, it's okay. It's understandable. We know why you're like this. we can easily explain your behavior. But why is it a problem?
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. I think it's not just that it's comfortable. It's why you're here, right? It's why you're doing the thing you're doing. Most of you did not get into this business to be salespeople and marketers. You came here to deliver. And so that's, as you're saying, Ahmed, it's totally fair. The problem is if you don't focus on the non-delivery components, right? On the marketing, on the sales, on the client acquisition in general, then, the rough truth is you're not going to have anyone to deliver to. And really, this goes back to understanding what's the most important thing to focus on at the right time. And we'll talk about that more, I think, probably another episode. But when we talk about consultants hiding in delivery, often what's happening is they're just getting ahead of themselves. They are trying to, polish the stone of delivery, something that they're also doing really, really well. They're trying to make it better. They're trying to improve it. They're doing all, really great things that probably need to happen, but that maybe aren't the most important thing if they don't have a full pipeline waiting for them.
Or their time allocations are all off,
yes.
Right? So, and the reasons why this happens, which we'll talk about in a second, but, if you're spending 80 to 100% of your time on fulfillment, that is delivering the service, that's not a business. That's a job. That's a bunch of jobs, potentially.
So let's talk about the formula. How much time should a consultant, professional service provider be spending on business acquisition?
So it really depends on what stage of the journey you're at. So if you're a solo consultant and you're delivering, fulfilling, and selling all the work yourself, you're a team of one. Maybe you have a small admin team, sure, but in terms of marketing, sales, delivery, it's all you. I tell people that they need to spend at least 20% of their time on marketing and business development. Right? So like 80-20. If 80% is going towards fulfillment and 20% marketing business development, that's 1 day a week, effectively. That's good at that stage. Now, if you want to grow beyond that and build a firm, and you want to be the managing director, the principal of the firm, that ratio needs to get a whole lot more tilted in the side of marketing and business development and growth.
Sure.
I think the reason people struggle with this, among other things, is number one, it's where they came from. So 2 typical scenarios into consulting. One is that is independent or boutique consulting. One is you worked at a big firm, KPMG, Accenture, Deloitte, Ernst & Young's where I came from, right? And, unless you were a partner at that firm, you were not responsible for bringing in business. No one looked at you to bring in business. Your job was to do the work, billable hours. And in fact, you were trained to maximize billable hours.
Yes.
And if your billable hours were lower than they should have been, or you were underutilized, that meant that you were likely on the chopping block, right? Like nobody at a big firm wanted to be underutilized because what are you doing exactly? If we're not utilizing you to your full capacity, you're dead weight. And if we need to make a run to layoffs, you're going to be the first person that we look at. So what you do at a big firm is you look for work to do. You maximize your billable hours. Anything under 40 hours a week of billable hours is unacceptable. Again, unless you're at the partner level. Or you came from corporate, where also you had no expectation of bringing business. Again, unless you were in marketing and sales, you were whatever executive or functional role that you held, and your job was to do the work, the same work that you consult on now. So this idea of being a business owner now and being an independent consultant or the head of a boutique firm and being responsible for bringing in business in addition to fulfilling on the work is a foreign concept for a lot of people.
So the question at hand then is, how do you get there? Right? Because we're talking about, with the folks that we work with, years and years and years of living in a certain environment, right? Of building a habit, of functioning a certain way, and quite likely, starting a consulting business if you're early stages with referrals and with, maybe people that you've served before coming back to you. So you haven't really maybe built the habit of, spending that time. What do you think is the way to make that leap, to make that shift?
So, first of all, I'm gonna go back to our friend Peter Drucker, who we've quoted in the past. The purpose of a business enterprise is to create a customer. Therefore, the business enterprise has two functions: marketing and innovation. So, just getting your head around what is a business and what are the functions in a business. That's the first step, because anybody can acknowledge and realize that delivering on the product or service is not the sole function of the business. You've got to have a process of consistently bringing in clients, marketing and sales. And so the way that we think about our business is we have three main departments. At our level 4, you have marketing, you have sales, you have client success, and you have operations. At a smaller level, operations is minimal. But those three exist at a minimum: marketing, sales, and fulfillment or client delivery. And so think about how much, not only time, but energy and bandwidth, mental calories you spend on each of those. And then think about the processes that you have in place. I mean, if you're any consultant worth his or her salt listening to this, and you take your client results seriously, I promise you, you have processes in place to ensure that your client delivery is smooth, that you can get clients results. You can deliver the work they paid for. You can do it on time, and you can do it to an acceptable level of quality. You would not just make things up and fly by the seat of your pants. But what about the other functions of the business, marketing and sales? Are there processes in place there that are reliable and can get results? Or are we making stuff up, or worse, paying no attention to it whatsoever until it's too late?
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about that is, if you don't come from our marketing and sales background, to your point, right? If you had the work delivered to you in some way throughout your career, it's sort of in a black box. It's behind a curtain. It's almost romanticized, right? Like, that the sales and marketing people are doing some magical stuff, and the magical stuff is dropping the work in your lap. And what is really interesting, when we are working with clients, is helping them take that thing that, yes, has magic attached to it, sure, but really, really getting clear on what the tactics are. I think that's really important from a mindset perspective. But also, the other thing we see is people struggling just to make the time, right? To carve the time out of their day. And as soon as additional clients come along, suddenly they're too busy. They drop the ball when it comes to business development. And then they get into that ongoing cycle, right? Feast and famine. But getting really clear, to your point, about what are the processes? What are the habits? What are the things that need to happen every single week, no matter what? Once that's built in, then life becomes so much easier, versus what a lot of folks try to do, especially early on, which is kind of tack it on, right? They're doing all the delivery stuff and then they want to kind of jam the marketing and sales in somewhere, or they're going to do it when they have time, or they're going to do it when this job is finished. And then they end up in big trouble. So there's really something about turning it into like a series of repeatable tasks that you just know have to happen. You brush your teeth, you have a shower, and you do all these other things on a really regular basis.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the challenges of being a solo or having a very small team is you as the founder or the principal, you're going to have to wear a lot of hats. So if you're a consultant of one, and even if you have a small team, but you're the principal, you're the managing director, whatever fancy title you gave yourself, right? you're going to be involved in delivery, and you're going to have to own marketing, and you're going to have to own sales until you're large enough to be able to afford to hire people to do that for you or to outsource it. And I want to talk about that a little bit in a couple of minutes. So wearing multiple hats is necessary at that stage: marketing, sales, fulfillment. And to put that really clear terms, marketing brings people to the table. Sales is the direct conversation to the prospects, and fulfillment is after they sign the check or the contract delivering on your promises. What founders or principal consultants do that gets them into trouble is they, first of all, don't acknowledge those hats. And then when a fancy deal comes along with a new client that would take their personal capacity to 110%, they go, well, let's put the marketer on this. Let's put the salesperson on this. Now imagine if you had a marketer and a salesperson and you were in charge of delivery. You had one person in each function, one marketing person, one salesperson, one delivery person. Imagine that world. And a new deal comes, and you as a delivery person cannot fulfill on that deal on your own. Can you throw the marketing person in there? Can you guys just help us out with this deal? No, that's not what they do, right? Now you have the ability to do it. That makes it more complicated. But when you start to define your role in those distinct categories, there's the marketing role, there's the sales role, and there's a fulfillment role. Then what you realize is you can't just throw the marketing person in on the deal. There's a cost to that, which is we don't do any marketing now, or we don't do any sales.
Yeah, and I also see consultants who hold on to that fulfillment piece so tightly because, to your point, if they're going to be above capacity, they need to either, shed some work or bring on help. And what's really, really interesting is the decision process that they will go through instinctively, right? If we haven't gone through a process, or they haven't gone through a process of really being intentional about it. And what they don't want to do is give up control of fulfillment. That is like the last thing on their mind. So I think it would be interesting to have a conversation about what happens, right? Because the reality is, as you continue to move forward and as your business grows, the ability to perfectly match resource to demand, it's an impossible game, right? You're always going to feel like you don't have enough work or you have too much work to some degree. And certainly the goal is to narrow that swing. But let's talk a little bit about what to do, because the instinct, your instinctive path is not always the one that is in your best interest.
Yeah, and it's a great question. So the question, if I'm hearing you correctly, is let's say you're doing it right. Let's say, whatever size you're at, you're maintaining the right balance of fulfillment and marketing and sales activities, but you're getting to the point now where you can't do all of those things on your own. And you have to start to back yourself out of some of those functions and put other people in place to take over some of that work. How do you decide what to back out of first?
Yeah, I think that is definitely the question. There might be a question before that, because that presupposes a certain level of growth. But there's also, even before you get to that point, before you're looking at bringing people on full time, before you're looking at, actually adding staff, there is just the swing that happens. And what I notice is overcorrection, right? I don't have enough work. Therefore, I panic and I do everything I can to bring in work. Then suddenly, I have too much. Now I'm going to stop the business development stuff because I have to go focus on fulfillment. And so I think it's worth talking about both of those scenarios, right? How do you handle the regular kind of week to week, month to month swing? And then absolutely, when you get to a place where you're reliably needing more capacity or needing more resource to meet capacity, then what do you do?
So I think you nailed it earlier. Our goal with our clients when they graduate from 90 Day Pipeline, and we're very explicit about this goal, is we tell people we don't care how many deals you sign in our time together. And we don't care how much revenue you earn in our time together. Will you close deals? Will you book revenue? Probably, and that's great. But what we actually care about is, are you building a system that you can rinse and repeat, execute on, right? Do we have consistent inputs now and a machine that you can deliver? In other words, can you drive the car? We built the car together. Can you now drive it around and do what you do? Do what you needed to do. In other words, operate it, right? And so, to your point, for the average consultant, great marketing is marketing done consistently, whatever that is. And we have opinions on what type of marketing to do and where to play and what platforms, and that's all aside, right? But any marketing done consistently is better than no marketing. And so if you peg 20% of your time, which, I think is table stakes, right? When you consider marketing time plus business development, taking sales conversations, etc. If you peg 20% of your time, what are you doing in that time? What are the consistent activities that you can execute on to keep the pipeline full so that you can then spend the rest of your time billing and making money, but do so with a clear conscience? Because I think we also tend to underestimate the cost of the chronic stress of not having a pipeline. And walking into your client's office or walking into their Zoom meeting to have an uncomfortable conversation about the work, knowing in the back of your mind or the pit of your stomach, if I lose this client, I'm screwed. That's very expensive, that chronic stress. So set aside the time and have a clear set of activities, but that presumes that you've built a system that you know how to execute, which we should probably talk about as well.
For sure. Let's do it.
Well, I think the question there is, okay, fine. If I had a system that I had confidence in, right, and that I could execute and you had to drive the car, I could find the time to do it. Maybe we get people there. How do you build the system, right? And, I don't want this to be a sales pitch necessarily. We have an opinion on this, obviously. But really, you got a couple of options. One is you outsource it. So hire somebody to come in and build you a marketing system and do your marketing for you. It's an option. We have opinions on this. Okay. Two is you, and by outsource, I mean like external third-party agency, do it for us. Two is you hire somebody in-house to run your marketing and business development. You hire a head of BD, whatever it is. That's your second option. And then your third option is to get trained on how to do it yourself. Is there a fourth? Don't do anything.
I was going to say, don't do it at all.
Yeah. The fourth would be like, post on LinkedIn once every 30 days and hope that deals come to you. That like spray
call
and pray.
People, a few coffee meetings. Yeah.
We're gonna
painful conferences, all that stuff. Yeah.
We're gonna go ahead and just get rid of that fourth option. Like if you're serious about building a system, you got three options: outsource it to an agency, hire somebody in house, or get trained yourself on how to do it. Okay, so let's look at them. What are the pros and cons of hiring an agency?
Well, certainly if I'm not comfortable and I've stated that I'm not a marketer, not a salesperson, it makes me, gives me this immense sense of relief that I'm handing it off to someone who does tell me they're an expert. I mean, there's a pro right there, right? There's a feeling that comes with it. Don't talk about cons at the same time or stick to pros?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the challenge though is, if you truly believe that some random person off the street who is doing this work for, 15 different kinds of organizations in all sorts of different sectors, is going to be able to create compelling messaging and speak about your business in the way that is going to really let people see what it's all about and draw people to you. And let's remember, especially if you're a solo consultant, really you're selling yourself. And so it is a completely different ballgame for someone else to sell you. And so, I would say that we are not against, at some point, having other people join you on your journey. But what is super dangerous is presuming that someone else is going to be able to do it better than you can and handing it off prematurely.
So, quick cautionary tale on this point. I was interviewing one of our clients who, and I didn't know this before we had the conversation, she was telling me that before she started working with us, she had hired a copywriter to come in and fix some messaging. And her her feeling was, my website's no good. I need to fix the messaging on the website. So copywriter comes in and fixes the messaging. Okay. The same copywriter says during that process, have you heard of these folks at 90 Day Pipeline? They do some really interesting work, right? And both of them end up joining our program, the copywriter and the client. And so this client joins a program, and we focus before messaging on positioning, i.e. strategy. Who's your target market? Who are we going after? What makes you stand out in that market? What's the offer? The core strategy of choosing where to play, that is positioning. And then messaging the words come from that, right? And so she does all this fantastic work on positioning. She goes, I felt so amazing. I feel so amazing about our positioning strategy, but all the messaging's got to change now. Right. And so she wasted all this energy and this effort and this money hiring this copywriter to work on messaging when she did the real work of positioning, that work had to be redone anyways. Right. And so one of the things about agencies is and we've worked with agencies ourselves. We hire agencies sometimes. Agencies can be really effective when what you have is a tactical problem. Run me some Facebook ads, right? Run this LinkedIn campaign. Create these Instagram videos, whatever, right? Tactical problem, hire an agency with a tactical solution. What they're not very good at, and if you find one that can do this, let me know, because I haven't seen one. What they're not very good at is helping you define strategy. They're not set up for that. It doesn't scale very well. And ultimately, you own strategy anyways. So how can they solve it for you? So that's agencies.
Yep.
And I think there's a place here for, if you're a multi-million-dollar firm, right, and you want to hire an agency to run a LinkedIn advertising campaign, that's fine, right? But don't look at them to solve for positioning and messaging. Let them run the ads. That's their job. So agencies. Number 2, hire somebody internally to run marketing and sales. Pros and cons.
Well, pros are the same, right? Takes it off my plate. I'm a consultant, not a marketer. Cons, certainly, unless you have a certain level of revenue, it's expensive, especially if you're talking about bringing someone in on a full-time basis. You're talking about someone owning it, right? Mm-hmm. And even if you can afford to bring someone in full-time, they're likely going to be relatively junior. So really what might feel like it's something that you're going to be able to hand off is not going to be that. Because again, similar to the conversation about agency, you still need to be the one that is setting the strategy and then, ensuring that this person is delivering.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, if you can find somebody who knows what they're doing and has built out marketing and sales processes and professional services and consulting and has a track record of doing so, they ain't cheap, right? Like you're talking about probably $250,000. If you're already a 7-figure firm, yeah, that might be a viable option. They're still not easy to find, by the way. And when they are findable, they're typically expensive. For a smaller firm, like sub 7 figures, your only option at that point is somebody junior that hasn't done it before, like a marketing co-op or a marketing intern, who again, maybe can be relied on for tactical execution of a program, but not so much for defining strategy. Which brings us to door number 3. Get trained to do it yourself. Pros and cons.
Well, pros we've alluded to in the first 2 options are, first and foremost is that your business. You know what it is that you are offering. And you are going to be the one that has your finger on the pulse when you are refining that or adjusting that or really finding the messaging that you want to go into the world with, to your previous example, right? So what you're really doing is taking that ownership, which I understand may not be the thing you want to have, right? Every bone in your body saying, give this to somebody else. But you owning it means that you can align all of your business acquisition activities with the true, beating heart of your business, which is the thing that is going to not just ensure that your prospects are seeing compelling messaging, but also ensures that you're going to be working with the people that you want to. So huge advantage from that perspective.
I want to push back on this idea that you don't want to own it. And you're right. I think that's a common sentiment. And here's my problem with that sentiment. What are you really saying? Are you saying that you don't want to have direct control and ownership over the process by which your business earns revenue? because I got a big problem with that sentiment, right?
Yeah.
I understand it's maybe foreign to you, don't understand it, you need to learn. I get all those things, right? I get the concerns. But if I'm a responsible steward of my business and I take my stakeholders seriously, that is myself, my family, the people that I pay, my clients, right? Remember this, your number one duty to your clients is stay in goddamn business, right? Like you do them no favors if you go out of business.
Yes.
So how do you then farm out the process to somebody else and hope for the best?
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
problematic.
Well, I think what the reality is this is where the reframe happens, right? And this is the reframe that folks need to do for themselves over and over and over again, day after day after day. Switching from I'm not a marketer, I'm not sales, I don't want to do that stuff, to I'm learning this, I'm getting better at it. Even, you know what, I'm a little bit afraid of this right now, but I'm figuring it out. And as soon as you can cross that line, then things become just much brighter, right? You stop fighting yourself, which is what happens when you're in the first camp and you're able to move forward.
Now, door number 3 can be followed by doors 1 and 2 if you want it to, right? So when you build the systems, I want to separate building the system from implementing the system. Those are 2 different things. My contention here is you ought to be the one building the marketing and business development system for your business, or designing it at least, because no one knows your business like you. No one knows your offer like you. No one knows your clients like you. No one knows your expertise like you, right? You're the only one that can design this thing. Okay. In terms of the day-to-day execution of it, you're going to have to be involved, most likely depending on what level you're at, but most likely you're going to be involved at some level, more if you're smaller, less if you're bigger. But you can bring on then an agency or a freelancer or somebody in-house to help with the execution of the system. That's fine. But hiring somebody to build the system for you when they don't know what you know is a dangerous exercise.
Absolutely. And I think the word that is maybe missing from when you talk about building and execution, the word that I'm most interested in is ownership, because that's really the key, right? And you're going to own this thing. The amount, to which you are on boots on the ground doing it may shift, but it's the ownership piece, which, is certainly connected to the building. But even once the thing is built and in place, again, as the person who is ensuring that you're going to have a healthy business, that's the place where you need to live, is squarely within ownership. And then understand, does that mean overseeing a team, when you get to the place where that's the case? Or does that mean I own it and I'm the person who's doing it right now?